Show some restraint.
Yeah, restraint.
I'd hardly call that showing restraint.
So, what do I mean when I talk about the power of restrictions in filmmaking? What restrictions am I referring to? Well, the biggest ones are these. Budget, that being how much money you actually have to bring your vision to life, and creative control, which is basically how many people are interfering with my vision. So surely lack of budget and a diluted vision can't be a good thing, so how can having these restrictions imposed upon you be powerful?
Shake his legs around, it looks like he's killing you. Okay.
The shark is not working.
The struggles in the set of Steven Spielberg's Jaws are well documented, and one of the biggest struggles was that the mechanical shark refused to work. Animatronic kept breaking down, forcing the fledgling director to come up with creative solutions. Solutions that drastically changed the movie, such as only showing attacks from above the waterline, or from the shark's point of view, or using the yellow barrels to imply the shark's presence. What this did was encourage the audience to use their imaginations, which often produces much more terrifying results than could ever be captured on film. And Spielberg admits that this decision to not show the shark until much later in the film was really the making of it, and added tension and mystery that wasn't in the initial drafts of the script.
I had no choice but to figure out how to tell the story without the shark.
He had to invent on the spot another way of shooting, which was to imply the shark, which made the film a great film.
I just went back to Alfred Hitchcock. What would Alfred Hitchcock do in a situation like this? So imagining a Hitchcock movie instead of a Godzilla movie, I suddenly got the idea that we can make a lot of hay out of the horizon line and not being able to see your feet, not being able to see anything below the waistline when you're treading water. What is down there is what we don't see, which is really, truly frightening. So.
Another example of imposed economy benefiting the final product is Reservoir Dogs, the first film by Quentin Tarantino. As his directorial debut, the budget was tight, but he crafted a story around these restrictions. The majority of the movie is set in one location, an old warehouse, and features only a small cast of characters. The film doesn't rely on action or set pieces or even, for the most part, plot. Instead, what it focuses on is solid dialogue, relatable characters, and human interaction. The action that any other heist movie would focus on, i.e. the heist, is absent from this film. And this instead focuses on the aftermath, and we only find out about it through the character interactions. How about the Blair Witch Project? Whether you're a fan of the film or not, it has to be said that this is a masterclass in budget filmmaking, and changed the horror genre for good. No sound crew, no lighting crew, no catering, one location, 3 actors, 2 cameras, and 248 million worldwide gross. Although it's not been done to death, the found footage style of filmmaking provided a much more visceral and immersive experience. Like you're right in the viewfinder, watching the events unfold. As well as being a style that many audiences had never experienced before, it also allowed for the infamous internet campaign that fueled the movie's success. 2007 horror Paranormal Activity also took the found footage formula and condensed and simplified it further, using only CCTV footage to tell a narrative. I try and imagine any of the films I just mentioned without the restrictions that they had. Imagine if the shark had been right there in the first scene, or if we knew exactly what happened at the heist, robbing us of all the tension in the warehouse. Or if we saw the Blair Witch studio lit and looming over us. Would it terrify us like the shaky, dark unknown? Some restrictions are placed upon you, but the true artists that understand the power of restrictions always practice restraint. Very few filmmakers get to the stage where they're not constrained by budget. The likes of Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, James Cameron, and Steven Spielberg come to mind. Most that are given this freedom tend to lose it. But also many choose to eschew the system and the allure of big budgets
Yes.
to retain their creative control and artistic integrity. Artists such as David Lynch and Robert Rodriguez.
How do you, as a filmmaker, feel about this growing trend?
Bullshit.
Lynch famously declined to direct Return of the Jedi.
And I was to drive to this place, and I came into an office, and there was George. And he talked with me for a little bit, and then he said, I want to show you something. Now, right about in this time, I started getting a little bit of a headache. So he took me upstairs, and he showed me these things called Wookiees. And now this headache is getting stronger.
So what happens when the budgetary restraints are lifted? We get films like Waterworld and Avatar, competently made spectacles which are ultimately all budget and no heart. Often, with huge big budget franchises, committees and focus groups are used to determine the best way to sell tickets and have the film appeal to certain demographics, which can often compromise the storytelling and artistic integrity of the director profoundly. And sometimes the vision and aspirations of the director can compromise the storytelling and artistic integrity of a franchise. There is one film series that I believe gives us an exceptional case study of restraint and lack thereof: Star Wars. I think it would be fair to say that the original trilogy 4 to 6 are generally liked, and the prequel trilogy 1 to 3 are generally disliked. So why is this? George Lucas is behind both trilogies, so what happened? Well, essentially, all restrictions were lifted.
You will remove these restraints.
I will remove these restraints.
In the mid-90s, following the success of CGI touchstone Jurassic Park, directed by his friend Steven Spielberg, Lucas decided to re-release the original trilogy with added CGI to bring it closer to his original vision. So with the advent of CGI, Lucas is suddenly completely unrestricted for the first time, and we get a unique thing: the chance to see the same 3 films where the director was restricted, and then when he's completely unrestricted. The infamous special editions were pretty much universally disliked, but paved the way for a much greater evil. The prequels are fantastically interesting. By the mid to late 90s, when The Phantom Menace was going into production, George Lucas was riding high, and due to the massive success of Star Wars and Indiana Jones, was financially stable enough to make whatever the hell he wanted. And since becoming financially independent during the making of the original Star Wars trilogy, he was completely free to do whatever his heart desired. So he took complete creative control, writing and directing all 3 movies. And as is evident in the hugely interesting behind-the-scenes footage, there seems to be very little discussion or consultation over creative decisions. Just a lot of yes men, and Lucas stamping the chosen ones with his golden scepter.
It's bold in terms of jerking people around, but I may have gone too far in a few places.
No one told George Lucas that he can't write dialogue, dramatic or comedic.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Or that his films were poorly structured. No one dared to question the god of the Star Wars universe. How could he be wrong?
That's great. It's going to be great.
That's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
That's going to be great.
Now, believe it or not, I think that this is not necessarily a bad thing. To see not just a film, but a film series that is 100% an artist's vision with no compromises made because of budget or conflicting creative ideas is a wonderful thing. I mean, conceptually, of course.
Mr. Jaja Binks, Mr. Your humble servant.
That won't be necessary.
You see, when Lucas was making the original trilogy, he recognised or was told his restrictions, and he worked to them, hiring other extremely talented creative minds to write and direct Empire and Jedi under his supervision. And as with the special editions, the advent of CGI played a huge part in removing restrictions, although it's worth mentioning that there are a lot of practical effects, including fantastic miniatures that didn't get discussed often enough. And it resulted in some bizarre creative choices that in many cases have not aged well, especially as the technology was new at the time. CGI, an acronym for computer-generated images, gives filmmakers the power to produce literally anything on screen. If you can think it, you can put it in your movie. But is that a good thing? The mid to late 90s saw the release of masses of CGI-filled blockbusters, with everyone jumping on the bandwagon of this as yet unperfected art form, substituting story and script for CGI spectacle. And it's only since filmmakers have realised the need for restraint that CGI has truly come into its own. The CGI is used best when it's augmented with practical effects to cross that uncanny valley. The greats of filmmaking knew that subtlety is the key from the very beginning. In Jurassic Park, the poster child for CGI, there's only 4 minutes of CG in the whole movie. Spielberg knew the key to making it work was restraint. So how come amongst all the CG spectacles of the 90s, this, one of the very first, still holds up? Restraint. Used sparingly, used in conjunction with practical effects, shoot in the dark and the rain, which not only adds more mystery to your monster, but it'll hide the imperfections of the effect. James Cameron, one of the pioneers of CG and of technical filmmaking in general, has utilised the power of computer graphics more than most, putting the pinnacle of technological knowledge into production of his 2009 epic Avatar. Alien worlds and countless new species were created nearly flawlessly and looked amazing, and it became the highest grossing film of all time, knocking himself off the top spot, showboater. But was it a good film? Yeah, I guess. It's okay. But that's it. It's okay. For something so groundbreaking, it was kind of forgettable. Why? Well, perhaps so much effort and emphasis was placed on CG and spectacle that the filmmaker was unable to devote a suitable amount of time to polishing the script, creating memorable, original characters and telling a story that we haven't heard 100 times already. It feels like the process and effects came first, and everything else is just a vehicle to showcase them, which isn't necessarily bad in itself, but it doesn't make for a particularly memorable or rewatchable movie experience in my opinion, especially when you're going to make like 10 more of them. Restrictions can often force a filmmaker to either tell a story in a new and creative way, or to simply rely on the often forgotten but truly essential elements of filmmaking, which are honest stories and relatable characters. Restrictions have been the cause of many great moments in film history. Like, Indy only shot this guy because Harrison Ford was ill in the morning of shooting and couldn't perform the storyboarded fight scene. It turned out to be one of the most memorable gags from the series. Whilst an unrestricted budget and undiluted creative control can be a magnificent thing in the right hands, time and time again it's been proven that it only works if the filmmaker is able to exercise restraint.